All right, everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and JMO.
I'm Mike.
And I'm JMO. Join us on our epic quest to research and review all 200 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro Catalog. Today, we are grinding our way through the Super Nintendo RPG series Breath of Fire and Breath of Fire 2 in an episode that we are calling The Wyrm Turns. Now, Mike, oh, by the way, listeners, Wyrm, Wyrm. I don't know if that's going to come through on the podcast, but spelling is big for this one. I think, as far as my titles go, Mike, this is one of my more clever ones. Did you agree?
I'm missing where you're going with the second level on this. Like, I appreciate pulling in Wyrm, though. That is a nice archaic touch.
Turn-based combat?
Hmm?
Yeah. Turns, like turn-based combat. We're taking turns. Come
Oh,
on, Mike,
yeah.
get on my level. You know what? You're not on my level. And
No.
speaking of clever ones, I think you are going to reintroduce a returning friend. Would you like to get us in there?
Yes. So coming back from episodes 13 and 14 of the first season, we have Ryan, or Warboss5, as he is on Twitch and YouTube. We are bringing him back because he has drawn the short straw again. So thank you for coming back, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And 5 internet points to anyone who knows what I just referenced. But yes, it's good to be back. I actually really like that you guys brought me back for this one because when we sort of met each other again for the first time at the reunion, I mentioned you guys were like talking about the show and talking about the stuff you covered. And I remember my first response was, "Oh, what about Shining Force? I loved Shining Force as a kid. I can talk about that for hours." And it was literally the ones you guys had like either just recorded or just released. So I was excited that I got to come back, and I'm getting to come back and talk about an RPG because RPGs were a huge part of my childhood when it came to like console gaming.
Although this one is a new one for you, though, right?
Yes, I did not play the Breath of Fire series when I was growing up because I was a Genesis kid and this was on the Super Nintendo.
So, for our listeners' context, do y'all have favorite RPGs? Because, like Mike, I know you didn't really play them before Shining Force. So, would you say Shining Force is kind of your favorite retro RPG up until this episode, at least?
I mean, I think does get that sort of by default. They're definitely not my speed, especially when they get more involved as what do these characters do, because I spend my life having to pretend to be like a person. So having to do that in a game just isn't fun for me,
You're already role playing every day of your life, is what you're telling me.
more or less.
Brian, what about you? Are you a Final Fantasy VI, acolyte, as so many people are? I'm feeling you're not.
So it depends on where your cutoff is for retro. Like if you want to go retro, like first, second gen console games, then it would be Shining Force 1 and 2. Loved those as a kid, played all the way through them. But if we're talking like everything from like, we'll say the PlayStation era backwards at this point, then my favorite RPG would have to be a PC game called Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscurica.
A title.
Man, really leaning into the Obscurica on that.
Oh no, it's a great title and it's a great game. It is. So it's this, I think it's the same. I think it was Black Isle was the name back then, but Obsidian, the basically the people that are making that make the good RPGs now. It was a title they made back then that was, I can't remember if it was before or after. I think it was after the Fallouts that they did. So Fallout 1 and 2. But it's this incredible fantasy world. It's incredibly deep. It has this wonderful system where magic and tech are in active opposition to one another, to the point where like you have a magic potion and you have a crafted tincture. They'll both heal, but depending on how skilled the person you're giving it to is in either magic or technology, they will heal to a different degree.
Wow.
If you're like trying to heal your dwarven artificer, he has to have the tincture because the potion does almost nothing.
I love how dorky that sentence was. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic. And it's this gigantic epic story that takes you all over this like world, and it's incredibly in depth. I cannot recommend it enough. Even if you've played more modern RPGs, it's a wonderful throwback to like the era of like Fallout 1 and 2, Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale, all that kind of stuff.
A quick aside, I just was witnessed a YouTube comments argument where this person was adamant that the first Fallout game was Fallout 3. And this person, this old timer like you and me, is like, no, it used to be a top-down RPG. And it's like, no, I'm talking about the first one. And the guy in the comments like, Fallout 3 was the first in the series. Like, it was just
The
disturbing.
thing you're to tell me is that the first Star Wars was Star Wars 4.
I know, clearly bullshit, right?
Well, speaking of some real BS or BOF, shall we get into today's episode, you guys?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So let's start off with today's first game, which is Breath of Fire, released on the Super NES in 1994. We will start by reading the description in the Nintendo Switch Online emulator. It reads, in a distant land, peace was maintained for thousands of years by the powerful Dragon Clan. One day, the goddess Tyr, I think it's Tyr, how would you guys say that? Tyr, Tyr, her,
Tire?
Tyr.
In
Tyr.
D&D, it's Tyr, because that's the exact name of the god of like light and justice. So,
Yeah, we should
Tyr.
listen to the D&D guy on this.
There we go. One day, the goddess Tyr came to them and offered to fulfill their every wish. Greed split the clan in two, creating the Dark Dragons and the Light Dragons. The clans fought over Tyr's magic as she watched and encouraged their war. Finally, a Light Dragon emerged and, with his 7 companions, sealed the goddess away. Now, centuries later, the Dark Dragons are destroying villages, searching for the goddess keys needed to release Tyr from her prison. It is time for a new warrior to arise and face this latest blight upon the land. Join Ryu, but not that Ryu, as he embarks on an adventure of a lifetime. He will need to rely on his companions if he is to rediscover the lost powers of the Light Dragons and save his sister Sarah from the clutches of the evil Dark Dragons. Fight and prove that the warrior of the dragon is no mere myth. Pretty hype, you guys. Pretty hype. Pretty overly complicated JRPG plot.
I don't know. It ends with you attacking and killing gods, so
Yeah,
pretty standard JRPG plot, really.
Yeah, as so many games in this genre do.
There's a Jackie Cashin bit about Final Fantasy, I think, of the worse the premise a game is, the more fun the game. And the Final Fantasy being the top of that because you kill God. And it's like, that's the worst premise ever.
How many experience points would you get, though, for killing God? Like, you'd level up a lot, I guess.
I feel like it's almost immaterial at that point. You're literally more powerful than God.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the box art, since that was often people's first impressions. I am putting the Japanese and North American box art side by side because the design is more or less the same, just with different aesthetic takes. We have a very anime manga take on the left. You got the main characters posing with a dragon, who I presume is the main character, taking her dragon form in the background. And then on the right-hand side, you just have a much more like Conan the Barbarian kind of presentation where everyone is hyper masculine. Like even the fish has a chiseled jawline. So it's very different takes. What do you guys think of these? Ryan, you want to start with you if you don't mind?
So the first thing that came to me, and this is probably partially because I didn't get as far into the first one as I did the second one, and I will absolutely tell you all about why that happened. But the first thing that struck out to me is the Japanese box art doesn't have the main character on it.
But it does.
It doesn't have the hero character. It does. I know that now because you've explained that he has a dragon form. But the blue hair, sword wielding, red scarf, Ike looking guy is the hero. Which, given the fact that these games did not have an obscenity filter, I'm sure everyone had all sorts of fun names for, which made the dialogue very entertaining in my playthrough.
What without just dropping an F-bomb, what was your character name?
You just prevented me from.
You can't. It's impossible to say.
Yep,
it's funny.
But no, I do dig the Japanese cover because it gives the characters a lot more personality. You know, every one of the English cover looks generically heroic. And for instance, like I think a big thing here is the fact that you lose the fact that this fish is so just hyper capitalist that he literally carries an abacus on his chest.
It's so cool.
It's like, no, I got to figure out exactly how much this is going to cost before I make this attack.
Did you meet that character?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, his whole thing is that he joins your party, but only to get his debt resolved. Like you owe
Oh,
him
okay.
money, and he will follow you to the ends of the earth until you get like the 50 gold back. Like it's not even a lot,
That's
and it's
funny.
obvious you have it by the end of the game. And so I think it's one of those things where, like, I like to imagine if he ever gets the gold, he'd stick around. I'll stick around,
Yeah.
like, because it wasn't really about kind of a Rocket the Raccoon thing. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just everyone looks so hyper masculine in the North American cover, including the female characters. Like, if you like, I just feel like it's all just one big blur of testosterone. I prefer the Japanese one too. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not getting hyper masculine on all of them off of the American one, but it does just feel blander. I think the colors feel a bit more subdued. The colors are a lot brighter on the Japanese one. I think as more characters that you can see better. I do like that the Japanese one makes it feel like at some point the lead character gets punched into a waterfall.
That was a Magic Carp Gyarados reference.
Yes, it was.
Ah, well done. And is it just me, guys? Looking at the North American box art, we're veering dangerously close to like Joe and Mac, ugly black box around your logo instead of giving it like a transparent background. I don't know. I just Japanese box art I think is a lot cooler.
I
Yeah.
do like the dragon attached to the Breath of Fire logo,
Yeah, it's in both versions.
although I did not figure that out on the game itself for longer than I feel like it should have taken.
Is it just me or is that Trogdor? Like that's basically the exact design of Trogdor.
It really does. Yeah. Holy.
Chiaroscuro
Wow.
S's. Trogdor. No,
Really coming up on the lack of beefy arms.
that's true. That beefy arm seals the deal.
He doesn't even have arms in the American box.
Well, guys, let me give you some trivia here about the game. If like the JRPG makers of the 90s formed a supergroup, they should call it Breath of Fire because the game was developed and published in Japan by Capcom and published in North America by Squaresoft, and then the Game Boy Advance re-released by Ubisoft. So it's just really like a who's who of game developers all having a hand in some way in the first Breath of Fire. Its lead producer was Tokoro Fujiwara, and we'll see him again in our Ghouls and Ghosts and Mega Man episodes. So that'll be cool. Breath of Fire had a manga adaptation by Tokomo Shoten Intermedia, and it retells the events of the game, but also adds some new characters, such as the protagonist's children. So that was kind of neat. Like the game has such anime influences. I'm happy like it has a manga. It has a manga. My A sort of blended there. The game's character designs were primarily done by legendary Capcom artist Kaiji Inafune, but according to a 2007 interview with Nintendo Power, Inafune was abruptly removed from the project mid-production, and the devs made the decision to keep most of his design elements because they loved working with the guy and they loved what he had already made for the game. And so they paid tribute to him by including a secret cameo of a Street Fighter character. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Interesting. I didn't get to that part.
And the main character is Ryu. I'm just going to say it's that.
Yeah, that would make too much sense. No, it's Chun-Li. You can see a secret cameo by Chun-Li because later in the game you come across this magician huckster. He says, I can make 100 gold disappear if you just close your eyes. And so if you agree to it, your eyes will close and 100 gold gets taken out of your wallet. And then he asks you, you want to open your eyes? And it's like, that's a weird question. So he repeatedly asks you if you want to open your eyes. And you have to say yes several times before you actually open them. But if you say yes, yes, no, no, yes, when your eyes open, you will see Chun-Li doing her little 1,000 kicks attack. And Ryan, I just thought you could get a kick of that because you had mentioned on our Caveman episode that you love little Easter eggs.
Oh yeah, yeah. And these old games are just rife with little Easter eggs here and there because it didn't take much space to add a little bit of, change one character sprite to look like a sprite from a different game, or just add in a room that you would only know to go in if you knew to bomb a specific wall or something. So it's not like if you put a cameo in a modern game, you've got to rig a skeleton, you've got to create the entire skin, yeah.
That's true. I never really thought about that before. You're right. Because you can do like a little prank and take like maybe an afternoon as opposed to a week's worth of paid time.
Exactly.
I never realized you're a wise man, Ryan Warboss 5. It never occurred to me why these little jokes are so rare these days because it takes more work to put them in with games being so impressive. All right. So, in case you haven't heard, some of my students have officially found the podcast. Okay. So everyone keep it classy. Ryan, I'm looking at you, buddy. I haven't forgotten your Kirby joke.
Okay, I will do everything in my power to keep it classy this time. I will try.
I think Breath of Fire might be, I mean, it's definitely the first and maybe the only game we'll cover that has like, I don't want to call it a sex scene, but it's like an adult scene. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Nope.
Did you get that far?
Nope.
It's weird. So at one point in the game, you need to get a lot of gold. The only way to get it at all, really, because it's a ridiculous amount, is you have to convince this cranky old man to give it to you. And he just talks about how much he thinks men are gross. Don't touch me. You're a dude. So if you change to the angel character and talk to him, he asks for a massage. Did you get to this part?
No.
Yes.
Okay. So Mike can attest that in the North American release, if you agree to give him a back massage, the screen goes black and starts to pulse pink as the sounds happen, right? Implying that there's like a massage happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gives you the money. But in the Japanese release, he doesn't ask for a massage. He says, "Oh, what a beauty you are. Please let me give your shoulders a rub. We'll give you money if you let me rub them." And then if you do, it's not the sound of a massage, it's the sound of him moaning. And then he says, "Great, thanks." I swear to look, listen. I know this sounds like I'm being a creep. I'm reviewing the game, okay? The game did this to me. I am just addressing it, okay, as a journalist. So then he says in the Japanese release, "Thanks, that was the secret to my youth," and gives the female character the money. It's the only text box in the entire game that doesn't. Normally it says, "You receive 10,000 gold." This time it says, "Nina receives." He pays her. You get what I'm saying? And then if you talk to him again, he says, "Oh, you want me to rub you some more? You certainly are a lecherous girl." Holy heck!
Woof.
I have to cut all of this, Mike. It's went to a weird place.
At least it's not as bad as the massage scene in Final Fantasy X-2.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't know if you should explain.
Go look up a video of that. Basically, the main characters are infiltrating the bad guys' base as just generic mooks. And the extremely attractive female lead villain pulls, I guess it would have been a Yuna that you've been playing at the time, pulls Yuna into the thing, and she's like, "Oh, good, you're here. It's time for my massage." And she like lays down, and this woman is almost entirely unclothed under normal circumstances. But she like lays down on the bed, and you have to play a mini game to give her a massage. And the whole time she's going like, "Oh yes," fully voice acted.
You're spoiling Jeremy's minigame minute.
It's so bad.
That's what games used to be, so blatantly male gazy and testosterone driven that it's just like, I feel like if you believe that's not really a part and people are exaggerating, you don't really know your history, I would argue. So let's get out of Creepy Town, huh? Can we talk about what we liked about Breath of Fire? Ryan, you're a JRPG fan. What did you enjoy about this first installment?
So I'll say that I did not get very far into the first one. Oh, and I've from your explanation earlier, you said the dragon clans.
Yes,
makes way more sense. The translation in that you actually place as dragon families, and all I could think to myself is the entire time was, we're working for the dragon mafia. What's going on here? So I was very, very confused. But I played the game as I do a modern RPG, which is if I'm being sent somewhere to do something, I am going to assume that the game will make sure I am of the proper level to do the thing by the time I get there. I was very wrong.
Yeah, you're underpowered.
Oh, dying constantly. And some of it's a little cheap, which I don't want to get too much into the weeds here because you know, we have a segment for complaints later. But yeah, so I felt like I struggled a bit with this one. I did struggle a bit with this one.
So is there anything you liked about it?
Let me see let me check my notes here. Oh, it was really hilarious to watch people drop F-bombs in the dialogue because of I named my character because of who I named my character. So that was very entertaining, although that was of my own making. Let's see. What was it? Oh, yes. I will say one thing I absolutely loved about this was the auto battle system. The fact that you could just click a button and stop paying attention to kill mobs that you know you're just going to attack.
Which was the vast majority of them. Like, it's a great game to like play while you're streaming something. You know what I mean? Kind of takes half of your attention because it'll do the battles for you. I thought the aesthetic of the game was pretty cool. I liked the character designs. I liked the enemy designs. I thought a lot of them were sort of visually interesting, like they're giant amoebas and, complete with like you can see the cellular system that we all had to learn in ninth grade science class. And this is one of the boss characters who's sort of like a beautiful woman, but with a beast lower half and like praying mantis arms. Just there was an imagination. Say it again.
So what do you mean, butt?
I think what Mike is trying to say is wood.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I'm going to keep going. I liked how this game looked. I think the character designs are pretty cool. And I found myself getting kind of attached to the characters. Mike, you read the manual. How many characters did you end up meeting?
I met 3.
Okay. Not counting the main character.
I am counting the main character.
Okay.
Because so one nice thing about the manual is the manual really gives you like a step-by-step of what you have to do. Like not exactly, but it's like, okay, you're going to this town and now you're going to go do this, to this castle and then all this stuff. So you kind of have the basic roadmap of what you need to do. And at the point where I realized that I had like 3 more steps to go before I would get to Kern, the thief, that is the point where I would decided that I was done because I was going along and it's like, I nearly got to be the next character, right? And then I looked like, oh, I have to go to like 2 more towns. I'm done.
So you didn't beat this game.
No, I did not. Ryan, did you beat this game?
I met exactly 1 character.
Oh,
yes. I hit a wall hard in the 3rd town. I'll just tell the story now. So like I said, I was going through this expecting to get the resources and get the power level necessary to tackle challenges. And by the time I got to Nanai, which I keep wanting to call Nani, which was amusing to me.
Isn't it Nina?
No. The 3rd town.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm remembering these things because I have the I have the manual because I actually read the manual this time. I fixed my mistakes from the previous episode.
You've learned.
But like I got through the opening, got to the first dungeon and beat that with some pretty substantial difficulty, which I'll go over when we get to the cons. But when I hit the 3rd town, I went into the dungeon. And incidentally, I love the fact that you could not enter the 3rd town unless you talked to one random guy in the 2nd town who said, maybe we should sneak in at night. And it's like, oh, right, there's a day-night cycle in this game.
You've got to play this game with a guide. It's so, I mean, again, we're trying to hold off the Joy-Cons, but like, it's so opaque.
I don't think you need a guide. Honestly, I think the manual was enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would consider that a form of guide, though.
I consider a guide to be like an additional thing you have to go seek out. They literally gave you instructions.
But I'm playing this in a modern way, so I mean, unless I feel like I have to, I don't read manuals because I think, I don't think the average person playing Nintendo Switch Online, all 20 of them, I don't think they are going to, look up the manuals if they feel like they're figuring it out.
Yeah, I just want to say, check the manual. That's all you need.
Okay. Well, you know something? NintenDON'T did beat this game.
Nintendo!
Family computer.
Nice.
And I'm really annoyed Mike wouldn't ask me because this is by far the most investment I've ever given to a game for this podcast. This game took me 39 hours to beat. I've been playing it since November on and off. So I'm so excited to finally be able to like close the book on this game. So I'll go through what I like about it because you guys both sound pretty down on it. I like the characters, each having not only different attacks and different spells, but they all kind of add a function to the game. So the main character, if you find these secret dragon trainers, you can take on a dragon form, which basically makes you a more powerful character with less abilities. Nina, the angel who heals people, can also turn himself into a giant bird at the end of the game. And that lets you fast travel without being attacked by random enemies. You can fly over literally the entire map, which is so liberating after having fought So many random battles in this game. Bo, the wolfman with the bow, he can hunt, which I didn't know. I'm watching Mike stream this game. I'm like, oh yeah, to hunt, you just corner the animals. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, you have to like basically herd the animal into a corner of the map. And if you pin them and they can't get away from you, they will panic, run in a circle, and then die. Mike, did you ever kill an animal that way?
No, I just used the bow and arrow like
I
normal
didn't know
people.
you could I didn't know you could put the hunter in the lead and shoot your bow. I like made hunting so much more difficult. And by the end of the game, I really could have used the antlers because those heal your magic points.
I read the manual and I saw that Bo could hunt, and I noticed because the animals start showing up moment one after your very first, side battle. And I actually did hit there's like a bridge leading to the third town where above the bridge is a very narrow little thing next to the river that's like 1 pixel or one walkway. And I managed to herd a elk up there and kill it way in advance of getting Bo in the party.
That's funny. You were hunting with your bare hands, as it were.
Oh yeah.
I did that the entire game, though, and I think the game was harder because of it. Karn is the thief character Mike is mentioning, who kind of bafflingly has the ability to fuse with other characters and take on like super combo forms. And it's just weird because like the character doesn't even really seem to understand why he can do this. Like an old man literally says, "Oh, we're related. Our family can fuse with people." And it's like, "What?" And then it's never really explained or addressed any more than that. So it's like,
I mean, do you understand everything you can do?
I I mean, I guess not, but to think that if I could do that, I'd ask why. But it's a neat mechanic though, because he fuses with the animal characters to take on a fish form or like a minotaur form, or eventually all the animal characters fusing, you become like a little dragon. But what's neat about it is that even though now he's taking up one character slot, you can still individually level up and equip those parts of him. So like, the fish disappears from your party and becomes part of his body, but that fish fused in his body is still gaining experience points and leveling up. I'd never seen an RPG do something like that. And it let you technically have all of the characters in one battle. So I was like, okay, kind of neat.
That is neat. I do like that. I wish I'd gotten to that.
It's deep in.
I just wanted his like lockpicking ability because there was stuff where I'm like, I can't get into this. And I appreciate that the manual tells you what they all do. So it was like, oh, I'm going to make a mental note that there's a lock I would like to get through here. I need the lockpicking guy. And I kept pushing for that, and it just took forever.
And he can also open up trapped treasure chests without taking damage. Everyone else takes damage, and Mike doesn't rewind, but I do.
I think there was a trapped chest in the first dungeon that actually heals you when you open it.
Just keeping you on your toes. Well, so then wrapping this up here, we got Gobi. He's the fishman who Brian mentioned having the abacus. That's a cool thing because when you get to him with Gobi, you can actually open up your own like item shops. You can walk up to an empty counter and he'll run around the back and you can sell the items you have that you don't want. But instead of just a flat price like you get when you sell them to an item shop, you can haggle and you can try to get more money out of people. So if you're a little short funded, it was like a little mini game. I was like, that's cool. I like that. Big Minotaur, he just breaks walls, nothing too interesting there. Blue is the sorceress who has the strong attack powers, and then Mogu is the little mole person who just lets you dig through the floor 2 levels below you. But it's only useful in specific story moments. Maybe it's because I spent so much time with the game, I got myself a little attached to these characters, at least visually. They were visually interesting.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the mark of a good RPG that makes you care about the characters that are coming with you.
Yeah. I think the second game accomplishes that better than this one does because it's just a little too focused on we got to save the world. And it's like, yeah, but what's your deal? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The role playing part.
Although I think this is the cooler bow.
The cooler bow.
Oh, I like Dog Bow.
Oh, that's right. They're both named Bo. I never realized that. B-O and B-O-W. Huh.
I kept mentally going, his name is Bow, as in like Bow Wow, because he's a dog.
I was thinking that too. Yeah. And the Breath of Fire, the first game, it's nothing if not imaginative, especially in the second half of the game. In the course of my 40 hours with the game, I journeyed to the bottom of the sea and the edges of outer space. I had to unfreeze a village that was stuck in time. It was really unnerving because all the NPCs didn't interact or move. They were like felt like mannequins almost. And then as you gradually fight against the evil sorcerer, more and more people get unfrozen and they start to help you unfreeze the others. It's just a neat concept. I got shrunk down to the size of an insect. I don't know if you guys can see on my screen here. That's the staircase that you go up, but it achieves this great using those Mode 7 graphics of scaling the background. They just make the layer of graphics that represent the floor bigger, and so it looks like you're shrinking. It's such I'm getting chills thinking it was such a cool moment. And now I'm walking around and everything like feels huge. At the end of the game, you fuse all of your party members into an all-powerful. By the way, wait, can I spoil the end of this game? You guys don't care, right?
Go right ahead.
Go right ahead.
Listeners, if you're going to play Breath of Fire, which by the way, Breath of Fire and Breath of Fire 2 are both just on the base level Nintendo Switch Online subscription. So for $20 a year, you access games like this. You all fuse into one massive dragon god and you fight this evil Lovecraftian goddess who at first takes the form of a crying woman and then becomes very like just really Geiger-esque mess of tentacles and mouths. It's a huge adventure. With so many secrets to find, so many NPCs, there's a lot there.
One other thing I did appreciate was the zombie town,
which was very Shining Force.
It sort of had that element. The other thing is just I appreciated the name.
What was the name?
Romero.
Oh, George Romero. Fun. Cute. Yeah, Breath of Fire 2 does that a lot. The pop culture references are out of control in Breath of Fire 2, so we'll get to that. And there's also a lot to complain about. So shall we get to the Joy-Cons? Ryan, you have things to say about my boy Breath of Fire.
I do. Get
him off your chest. Get him off your fire-breathing chest.
So, like I said, I feel like this game is, well, and again, this is, par for the course of the time, but I feel like it did not pace itself well. I feel like all of the other problems stem from a lack of pacing, not in like story beat pacing, but in like progression pacing. That you should be able to, like I said, when you're sent somewhere, you assume the game is like, okay, here's your next challenge. You should be able to handle it, by the time you get there. And there's a certain amount of randomness, of course, involved in, random battles. You never know exactly how much XP a person will accrue, but you have a 1 to 2 to 3 level range that you kind of figure everyone's going to be in by the time they get there. And I found that just every time I entered any new zone, I was dying repeatedly. And the biggest thing that was killing me was the fact that this game used Pokemon poison rules.
Oh, God.
Which is when you're poisoned, every step in the overworld takes 1 hit point. Which,
break it. Like constantly sound effects and flashes.
Yeah, which would be fine if the treasure chests were giving you antidotes, or you had a healer character with you, or, in the first dungeon, they give you pools of water that are full heals. Great, but like the 2 that exist are like in the first quarter of the dungeon, and then you have to get through the rest of the dungeon where you are constantly facing enemies that have an unavoidable poison attack. And it was absolutely infuriating by the time I was at the end. Every time I saw those little bloody bugs pop up, and it's like poison attack. Oh God, it's not the flies, the pill bugs, the little poison. I think their name was either pill bug or poison bug because it was P bug, but all they do is roll at you and poison you, and unless they crit, they do no damage. So it's like all they're doing is basically poking you once and going, ha ha, your next 5 minutes are going to suck.
And especially because with that, like the first town's like, oh, you can get all your items over here and here's all this other stuff. Like there's so much of a layout of what the first town had that I just presumed I would easily be able to get this stuff later. And then I couldn't.
Yes.
And it was so frustrating that after an hour of playing the game, I quit, deleted my game, and started over where I bought a bunch of items, and then I was fine. But it was this thing, like, it's when you start off with like, here's the things in a town, and then you make it a deliberate point that the next couple towns, that's not an option. So my situation is only go all the way back through all the junk that's out there, or just deal with it. It was like, nope, I'm just going to start over. knowing what I have just learned in 1 hour of this and redo it. So that then it was fine. And I just always had, stacks of antidote and stuff because they weren't that expensive. But nothing told me you're going to need this because you think you're going to get a chance to buy more items, and you're not going to get that chance.
No.
I mentioned on the Shining Force episode that like old RPGs don't respect your time, and this seems guilty of that.
That's exactly the wall I bounced off of. I got to the second town. I will admit the sneaking to get into the town by sneaking and not going too close to the guards and still going into the houses that you could and rifling through their shelves because the shelves always had stuff on them. And then that was fun. But then you get to the dungeon, you start going through. Those bloody pea bugs are still there. You fight your way through and you get to the boss. And I'm like, okay, this is the night. This is the boss. When I'm done here, I can leave. So I am going to abandon my old item hoarding ways, like where you end Final Fantasy VII with like 50 max ethers just sitting in your inventory because you was always worried someone more important was going to come along.
You're going to go for broke.
Yep. And I burned every item I had, every healing item I could to try and get the knight down. I got him to about a quarter of his health and he killed me. And so I'm like, all right, fine. That's fine. I'm getting, we're going back to the last save slot, to the save point. I had the items. We can, maybe I can grind a little bit and we can try again. And I opened up my inventory and it was empty.
Right.
And I thought, wait, the only item shop I can access is in the starting town. Done. I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore.
But you know what's funny though? I didn't include it in my slideshow. The last screen of the game is a poison bug thanking you for playing. And I wonder if they knew that people were gonna hate that thing. And it's just like a passive aggressive like little dig. The game is crazy opaque as far as how to get to the end, because I mentioned that like the main character can become dragons and Karn confused to other things. But you gain those abilities by finding secret NPCs in little holes in the wall and behind trees and weird random spots on the map, which is fine. Put secrets in your game, but don't make them required to progress. Because it's like, how did anyone beat this? And it gets even like, worse later. This is a maze, a dungeon towards the end of the game that is composed entirely of invisible walls. Every wall is invisible, and the only way to make it to the end is to know exactly how many steps to take, in what direction, and count your character's steps. What? How is that legal?
It's like the walls kill you or what?
No, the walls they're just walls. Like you just touch them, but it's a maze.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess you could pencil it out. Right? You could create your own map, but I just don't have the patience for that.
Oh my God. The poison was training you to count your steps.
Maybe. I don't know. But then there's a moment later in the game, or maybe it's before this, I forget. It all kind of blurred together into a weird purgatory of dungeons in this game. There's another dungeon where at every intersection, the map will rotate a random number of times. So like, excuse me, not random. I say random because like it rotates a different number with each intersection. So like just daring you to keep your, compass north or whatever. Ooh. It's wild, Ryan. Like you thought this game was mean. You had no idea how mean this game would get. He's just taking it in. He's letting it wash over him.
The fury I would have felt. And yet, we were a different breed back then. When you're kids and you've got all the time in the world, you're like, this will not beat me.
I mean, we talked about on this podcast how game designers will admit, like, yeah, I didn't want people to rent it and beat it in a weekend. I got to make this game long enough that people will sink was it like, I think 60 or $70 back then?
Yeah.
Which in 90s terms was like, what would that even be now? Like 100 something?
Ugh.
Like, it's crazy. And a very common complaint with the first Breath of Fire, I think probably my last, well, no, not my last biggest complaint, is the text boxes for the items had to abbreviate things so extremely that it was often confusing what we were picking up. So we're going to play a little game. We're going to take something that's not fun and make it fun, okay? So I don't know if you guys got a pen or pencil ready, and play along, listeners. We're gonna play ROSTN. What do you think ROSTN stands for? And I'll give you guys a clue. This is a translation game.
Oh no.
The game hasn't started yet. It's Rosetta Stone. That's how this game would abbreviate Rosetta Stone. Like, abbreviations are that bad. So here's the game. Here's how it works. I'm going to read you an actual item name. Okay, word for word, how it appears on the game. You each take a guess. Okay. If you know it and you get it first, you get the point. If neither of you get it, I'll decide who got closer. Okay, you ready?
Ready.
So the first one, MYSTCW. MYSTCW. What does that stand for? What item is that?
I gotta say Mystic Crossbow.
Mystic Crossbow. Okay. What's your guess, Mike?
I'm going to go Mystic Water.
I'm going to give it to Ryan because it was Mystic Claw, and it was a weapon.
Claw. Ah.
Claw. CW for claw. Yeah. Oh, Ryan. All right. 1 point for Ryan. Second one.
Woo.
EOWERDR. So I guess I'll give you the capitals. Capital He, and then OWER, capital D, capital R.
EOWERDR.
Yes. Mike, what's your guess? We'll let the person who's behind get first guess.
Power Doctor. That's my internet handle.
Ryan?
I think it's Power Dagger. Is this another weapon?
Correct. Ryan gets another one. Power Dagger. All right. LOYALRP. LOYALRP. And listeners, if you hate this game, there's only 2 more left.
Let's go Loyal Rapier.
Yes, Mike gets one. Good job. All right. DKKISS. So 2 Ks in the middle there. Mike?
Dark Kiss.
Yes, good job. Yeah, which that's what that does. It casts rub in the middle of a battle.
Cast what?
Rub?
Rub. There's an attack called rub
Oof.
that has a small chance of killing an enemy instantly. And I don't know why it's called rub, and I don't know why the dark kiss item makes you rub your enemies. This game is thirsty, as my students would say.
Feels like the foo-foo attack from Dragon Quest.
All right, well, I'm excited. Final round. Okay, so this is going to be just a race. Okay, or I'll decide who gets closer. Last one. WTZIT.
Is it a what's it?
Mike wins. It's a what's it, which becomes the eye claw after it's examined by the W man and the eye woman. Come on, Breath of Fire.
Doesn't Apple make an eye claw?
I'm not saying they did what they had to do for the coding restraints of the game, but my gosh, it does not age well to be guessing that much. And there's a little question mark thing you can go in the menus. It's just an extra step, and even then, some of the explanations aren't great.
A lot of them were just you can use this in battle, which is not actually an answer.
Doesn't even tell you what it does. So last Joy-Con for Breath of Fire is last 2 gripes. This auto battle system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've already discussed how we hated how many random battles there were. It was excessive.
I was fine with the number.
So Ryan and I hated it. But the game has to end that way. The final boss is a required auto battle because you become this dragon god, which is the only way to give damage to the final boss. Mm-hmm. And the dragon god has only 1 attack, and there's only 1 enemy on the screen. And all of your characters fuse to become the dragon god. So this auto battle thing was like, okay, I appreciate the convenience, but when you make me take my hands off the wheel for the final battle, it's a huge peeve. Like, we thought quick time events for ending a boss was bad. I think there's a worse option, which is just don't even let me press anything of import.
You just described a cutscene. You realize that, right?
I did. I guess I did. Yeah. But I don't know. I also hate that too. I hate when games have a big final battle that you don't get to play. It's all a cutscene. It's not satisfying.
And I mean, they've been doing that for years. The final battle of Final Fantasy X may have you were able to control your characters, sure, but your characters all had auto regen and auto res on, so it's essentially a cutscene.
Right, exactly. But my gosh, though, the second wind mechanic. Do you guys remember these bosses? Every boss, after you deplete its health, it'll go into its second wind mode. And now you don't know how many more hits it's going to take. There's a second life bar that you don't get to see.
Oh,
This is specifically on my list of complaints because it's ridiculously opaque. And the first time it happens, especially, it's annoying. And it never becomes not annoying. So you're playing this with the strategy of like, I can see what their life bar is and see how much damage I'm doing. When that gets down to 0, it comes back as just a sliver of life. And then I guess I just keep going, but I have no idea what's going on with that mechanic. The manual doesn't mention that that's a thing. And it's particularly frustrating because none of the boss battles are fun to begin with because the damage you do is so slight, and especially so much of this game is, especially the early game, is just one-on-one battles, that it's just, I am doing small slivers of damage interspersed with healing to eventually push that all the way down. So there's no strategy to this. It's just repeating the same sort of task. It becomes really tedious. And then the boss gets a little bit of health back with no idea of what's working and what's not. It's like, I don't know if it's certain attacks can kill them and the other attacks won't do damage, or if it's a certain number of hits, or if it's a certain number of damage. None of that is clear. And it's presented in a way that makes it feel like there's an answer. It's not being communicated. And it's so frustrating.
Well, Mike, if I told you that the final boss's second secret health bar took me over 10 minutes to deplete, can you imagine that? It's like, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to do that whole villain coming back from the brink. You thought they were done, but when that happens every time, and like, imagine if Die Hard, right? The Carl comes back from the grave to try to kill John McClane one last time, and then there's a 10-minute fight scene after the climax of the movie. Come on, guys, what are we doing? Anything else? Any other Joy-Cons about this game?
that doesn't bother me as much because I'm a Dark Souls player, so I'm 100% used to out of nowhere second and third phases. Although those at least usually accompanied by some sort of really cool transformation sequence, you know,
And a life bar. They get another life bar.
and a life bar, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like another life bar would be fine. And I think the other thing related to that is just so much of this game, it takes so far to get to having anyone else in the party. There's so many one-on-one battles that are not fun because they just take on this tedious nature because it's having to work a life bar down in this very slow process. And then this also does a thing that is just should be illegal in games, which is to have a battle that you are required to lose for the plot, but where you can use your consumable items in that battle.
That was a staple of RPGs, though. That's like, oh, this will feel cool when you defeat this later, but you can't do it now, but we won't tell you that, and we'll let you try.
No, it should be work it in that I don't have consumables at that point for some reason. I don't care.
So you can't lose something from the effort.
Yeah. You shouldn't set this up so that resources that I have budgeted to use for this don't matter.
Well, I think you just discovered what it feels like to be a parent, right? Like all your money goes away. It's fruitless. What'd you do all this for? I don't know. This is a stupid joke. This is getting pretty negative, guys. Can we switch over to our next game or anything else to say about Breath of Fire?
There was one thing I wanted to talk about with the manual specifically that I found interesting, if I might digress for a moment.
Do it.
So like you were saying, the manual tells you every location you're going to visit. It tells you every person that's going to be on your party. And I was looking at this and going, why does this manual have so many spoilers? And then I remembered that the stance on spoilers in Japanese culture and the stance on spoilers in American culture are very, very different.
Oh.
Like I learned about this the other day. I was watching, I don't know if you guys are fans of Team 4-Star, but they're the guys that did Dragon Ball Z Abridged. But their two core guys, Lanny Pator and Kaiser Neko, are doing a watch through of Dragon Ball GT, which they are both suffering painfully through. But they mentioned in one of the episodes that the title of the episode gives away the ending of the episode. It's like, I think it's one where Goku's, spoilers for Dragon Ball GT, if anyone actually cares. There's an episode where Goku dies, right, or seems to die. And It's like the title of the episode is something like Goku's dead. What will Trunks and Pan do? And it doesn't happen until the end of the thing. And they were talking about how this is actually kind of common when it comes to anime titles and anime like episode names, because in the Japanese market, I guess, the idea of knowing the ending of something is not considered that big of a spoiler, because it sure tells you where it's going, but it doesn't tell you how it gets there. And reading this manual, I saw that writ large, because they're telling you every location you're going to go to, but they're telling you nothing about the journey.
I was also wondering if some of this, I wonder if the Japanese manual actually did this because Legend of Zelda added in the American manual like instructions, because apparently it was proving difficult, and they provided here's how to at least get going. So I was also wondering if this was something of, to make the game easier, they added that in.
I could see that too. Absolutely.
I will also add as a final thought, and this may be exactly why I'm not a role-playing game kind of person, is I don't like that there's things that refer to the character by name, but also I'm allowed to set the character name. I think it should either refer to him in a generic sense, or if that's the name, that's the name. And the idea of, oh, but I need to give it a name bothers me as an incongruity.
There's so many things that bother you about this game, but I love that was worthy enough to mention.
Yeah.
It's just the hills you die on. All right, well, let's try to shake it off, as Taylor Swift would say, and go into our second game of today, which is Breath of Fire 2, released for the Super Nintendo in 1994. Let's read the official description off Nintendo Switch Online. It says, set 500 years after the original, take on the role of Ryu, the last member of the Dragon Clan. Your father and sister have been abducted, and the village have mysteriously forgotten them. Team up with fellow orphan Bao and embark on an incredible adventure. A cast of unusual and exciting companions join you in your adventures across a wondrous land full of magic and mystery. You'll find strange mystic items, memorable monsters, and exotic locations in your quest to conquer evil. There's strategy and spellcasting galore in the hours of compelling action and adventure that await you. Breath of Fire 2. Let's take a look at the box art, because that was often people's first impressions. It's kind of similar notes to the last time. We got anime looks on the Japanese cover and just extreme Conan the Barbarian kind of. What was that comic artist you mentioned, Ryan? That's like Rob Liefeld, the guy with the huge muscular comic characters.
Yes, yeah, Rob Liefeld. Although I will say, in the defense of the artist for the American cover, Rand is supposed to be that big.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't see any feet. That's the dead giveaway for Liefeld's disease. You've got the pointy triangular feet.
So this could be Liefeld. There's no feet drawn. He would avoid drawing it. But look at Bao, though. It's like, why does Bao look that tough? He was kind of the comic relief character. I don't know. I love the colors in the Japanese one. I would once again give it to the anime style cover box art. Would you guys agree?
I think on this one, I think the Japanese one isn't that good. I think everything feels too small.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they tried to put everybody in there, and so they set them all so far back that it just kind of all blurs. Whereas I think the other one actually feels more dynamic, and they didn't feel they needed to put all the characters. So you start with the main character front and center, and some people supporting them. So I think I'm going with that one on this one.
You know what? You convinced me.
The Breath of Fire, the American covers both looked like they could have been comic book panels.
Yeah.
Which, it's great. I enjoy comics. I get that there's a lot of dynamic posing in them. Like you are literally about to be beheaded by the hero in this shot, that kind of thing. The Japanese, what I think made the first one better, because the second one it's okay. It's sort of a hodgepodge of your characters all doing a pose, which is fine. But what I felt set the first one apart, what I really liked about that one, is it gave me Drew Struzan vibes. Because he really loved mixing sizes, like someone is in the foreground and it's just their face, or one of the more famous ones is Vader looming over the rest of the cast in the Star Wars posters, and I feel like this one does not get to the same place the first one does, and I think it suffers for it.
I agree. Well, so let me give you some trivia for Breath of Fire 2. It was developed once again by the Dream Team of Capcom and published by Laguna Games and Ubisoft. And the lead producer was once again Takeru Fujiwara. The game had commercials in Japan with pop star Mio Watanabe singing the game's theme "Unending Love," which, Ryan, as you would say, it's a banger. We'll put a YouTube link in here, but I listened to the whole full 4 minute version. It's really cool. If you have a soft spot for like anime intros from like the 90s, oh, it's super sick.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's rad. You're gonna like it. And in addition to having the original game Sorceress Blue as a secret character you can add to your party in Breath of Fire 2, it makes a number of odd references to history and pop culture. I'm not even gonna go over them all because there's so many, but notable ones. There is a weaponsmith in the game named after Mikhail Kalishnikov, who is the inventor of the AK-47 rifle. There are characters called Trout and Kilgore. Anyone get that reference? Kilgore Trout.
I remember the characters. I don't. They didn't.
It was a Kurt Vonnegut reference. Kilgore Trout is
Huh.
Kurt Vonnegut's pseudonym, and it's a recurring character in a lot of his novels, including Breakfast of Champions.
Hmm.
This one, guys, you agree? Looking at the goblin enemies, that's Stripe, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. The clearly just borrowed the design straight from it. Did you guys get to the Chirorus, the face huggers?
Oh yeah, I forgot about the face huggers. Yes.
Yeah, Mike, you want to talk about this one? Because it's kind of a cool level.
Yeah. So there's at one point you show up in a town and you basically get told like the well dried up, and then a kid fell in the well, and then everybody else went to look for him, and no one's come back, which was a whole lot of. It veers into like an NPC trauma dumping. It's just like that's a lot going on that you've just told someone who wandered into town.
Right.
And so when you go down there, you basically find out that someone's been sending their love down the well. Because you get down there, you find the kid, you find that you've got like a giant turtle to fight, and then it's like, oh, there's other monsters down here.
Yeah.
And when you go to, it's like, quick, get the other villagers out of here. You basically come up on someone and they're facing away from you. Actually, the first one I found just turned around. It's like, oh, good, we can get out of here. The second one turns around and you have clearly a face hugger on them, and you have two different like life bars. You have one for the villager and one for the face hugger.
Yeah, and so you have to attack the face hugger and not hurt the villager. So you can't use attacks that like damage everybody because then you'll kill the villager. And Mike, do you know what's at stake in that level? Because it's actually pretty rad.
So I think actually, so one of the other things that this game has going on with it is you actually build up like your own town
Yeah.
over the course of it. And so I think it's that depending on if you can rescue everyone, you later then have to get someone to come build houses in your town. And if you rescued everybody, you have options for like what kind of house that they build. You can select different carpenters for different houses.
Yeah. And like one guy will build like a tavern, and that makes like, more characters come to your town. And one character will build this like a advice place, and they'll give you like advice. So I thought that was really rad. I love when games let me influence the story arc, not in any major way, but I love that. I love that extra wrinkle. I love the mechanic of the face huggers. It was like, this is a moment. This is clever. This is interesting.
Also greatly appreciate that one did allow me to, because it was just like, well, this is more battle in here than I was prepared for. I actually was able to leave, go get more items, and then go back down and finish up. So it wasn't
Right.
like, no, you got to just deal with it. It's like, no, you can come back. They're not in a rush.
They're not going anywhere.
But speedrunners would have let those people drown for sure. And the last one I want to mention is that there is this weird moment in the game where you can enter bathrooms now. Like most of the buildings have a bathroom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck was with this game and deciding that, number one, all the buildings have bathrooms, and number two, like half of them are occupied, and you're just like, I don't.
And they're their own little pocket dimension too, because you have to go. There's not even part of the building. You have to go through a door. The scene transitions, and it's just the bathroom.
It would be weird if you could always see in the bathroom.
But so the characters will be like, what are you doing in the bathroom? And I'll say, I'm a creep. Like, but one of them says the character turns around because you approach from behind, and he goes, it's Hanako. Did you guys get the reference?
Why do I know that name?
Hanako the Toilet Ghost is a Japanese yokai. There's, obviously because it's a yokai and an urban legend, there's different origins, but my favorite is that a young girl in the bombings in World War II took shelter in a bathroom and died there. And so the legend has it that if you go to the third story of a building and go to the third stall in the women's room and knock 3 times, you will summon Hanako.
Japan's got a much more depressing Moaning Myrtle.
I was gonna say that J.K. Rowling, no, but it's the other way around. J.K. Rowling clearly borrowed this from Japanese folklore.
You're telling me J.K. Rowling stole stuff from other franchises? Ah, perish the thought.
Listen, guys, huge bomb drop, but J.K. Rowling might have questionable morals. I'm just saying.
I don't believe it. I can't believe it. Oh, I'm scandalized.
Yeah, but also, this character was called Toiletta in Yokai Watch too. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys ever played Yokai Watch. It's like a delightful little Pokemon clone that has its own little take on things. So, did we like Breath of Fire 2 more? I'm gonna guess yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. What made it better, Ryan?
So what made it better for me and what I really enjoyed, and the reason I may end up playing more of this after we're done here, is it just the story grabbed me way faster.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a lot of ambiguity, a lot of very interesting mysteries. Like literally, I mean, aside from like going outside, it's like, oh, go find your sister. Okay, fine, I'll go find my sister. Walk out back. There's a casual dead dragon just lying on the mountainside.
Yeah.
There was too much grayscale in that bit, though.
But that was interesting, though. Why was the game black and white when you see the dragon?
Oh, it turns color as when you go the right direction, it turns color.
Right. Well, what was that about? I feel like there was a reason.
Oh, I think it did black and white to sort of give you the whole indication that the opening bit is all
memory.
Yeah, you're basically, most of the game is taking place at this point in time. That is effectively a flashback to get the origin story set up. So it's like, I appreciate that grayscale, like black and white, means we're in the past now.
Yeah.
But for gameplay, that wore thin real fast.
Yeah. It's like, oh, giant dragon. Oh, when the sister naps next to it, she can talk to mom. Oh, why am I seeing this giant eldritch eye? It throws a lot of stuff at you in the first 5 minutes, and I was very intrigued. I'm like, I want to see where this is going. I have theories. I mean, dragon is clearly actually mom. Those are the same people.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Well, because you think about it, think about the story. It's like, your priest dad is like, oh yeah, the war came here, and your mom disappeared right about the time this dragon showed up and saved our town.
And we've never seen them both in the same place at the same time.
Exactly. Odd. And we know that the main character from the title of the game has dragon-based powers. Can't imagine there might be a connection there.
I mean, I didn't see it coming.
Is it also weird to anyone else that, like, because this bothered me more with, like, Shining Force did Shining Force 2 Children's Edition, and in this we do Breath of Fire, and then it's Breath of Fire, and we're starting kids again, and I'm like, why did everything be like, oh, we're gonna make another one of these movies? What if they're kids? Like, can we just skip to adults?
I think one of my most appreciated improvements is the menu system. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
Breath of Fire had an icon-based system, so you had to remember what all these little symbols stood for. Most confusingly, which is like the up and down arrows and the left and right arrows, and like one of those is like which character leads your party around the overworld map, and the other one is like which character stands in the front lines in battle.
I was more frustrated by what the heck's the cabbage mean, and I eventually figured out that that's like armor, but that took a long time.
Oh yeah, it just looked like armor. That's funny. So Breath of Fire 2 mercifully changes to text, like they have more room for text on the screen, but they also give you more information without having to do extra clicks. So like at the top of the screen, it'll always tell you whatever the thing you're looking at does. So there's the need for the question mark button is gone. And there's a little dancing goblin. Did you guys know what he was doing?
Yeah, I was supposed to let you know like what the chances of like monster encounters where you were was.
Right. So like if you press pause and you see the little goblin is like fighting, you're like, okay, I better have healing items because this area isn't safe. Mm-hmm. And if he's sleepy, it's going to be less. I took 40 hours to beat Breath of Fire, and it's not until I was looking at the manual this morning did I realize that if you put the Minotaur in the lead, he's slower and you get more enemies. I thought he's bigger, he'll scare enemies away. I swear I read that somewhere, but I read that and my heart sank, and I was like, how much time did I waste?
You deserved that. There's a lesson.
Why did I deserve that? I like the animations in this game. So the overworld maps between the two games are pretty similar, but there's a couple of key differences in the way that the battles look. And you see so many battles in both these games that I think it's a significant change based on how much you see it. Number one, the characters have more frames of animation. So like Cat, the cat girl, she'll twirl her baton and then smack. I got a little kind of Puppy the Pew frog warrior, and he'll look at the camera and like wiggle his eyebrows before he stabs. I was like, it's fun, nice little personality to it. But also, I love that the characters have, the camera has rotated 45 degrees so that now they're facing the enemies, but you see their face and their front. And it just connected me to them so much more. Like, it just made me think about, what if there was a movie where most of the time the characters were facing away from the camera? That'd be really weird, because you don't endear people. You don't get endeared to people if you can't see their face. So I liked looking at the battles a lot more, which is nice because you look at battles a lot in these games.
Yeah. And I do appreciate as well that the animators decided that we needed Cat to have a pose where we could see her face, but also her butt.
Also her booty.
Very important.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
important.
There's a lot of weird question. I think she also has a wiggle when she's walking, if you're going up. And it's like,
She got the hip wiggle?
Yeah, it's like, that's extra work that's barely noticeable.
Well, someone noticed it. You creep.
But then again, there's a lot of odd decisions with that character design in general, because to the best that I can tell from both how she looks, the manual as well is just like, did we just not even bother with pants for her?
She's a cat.
She has fur. It's fine.
Yeah.
But she's wearing. Grant, at some point this devolves into like the Donald Duck thing. It's like, why is she wearing as much as she is then, if that's the argument?
Right. Oh, but I mean, like Donald Duck, right? He's wearing a coat and a hat. I wouldn't be upset if I saw you without a coat and hat. It says feathers are the necessary clothes.
Yeah, but then it's just getting the, it's why is he wearing a shirt, and why does he get weird if you see him without the shirt? Like, where are your priorities?
But this game, though, it makes a lot of more like dirty jokes. Sorry to keep bringing it there, but like beyond the little animations and like Nina when she casts a spell and like her skirt's kind of whipping up a little bit, like a lot of characters are like, oh, like she's attractive. Like, I'll help. Maybe she'll like me. Maybe I'll get a kiss out of this. And then this game has the fusion element. It's a little different this time, but it's introduced in a suggestive way. This attractive wizard sorceress goes like, do you want to fuse with me? Okay, come in here alone. We're gonna fuse together. And it's like, come on, like keep it classy, Capcom.
It's worse than that. On that one, it's anyone else approaches, he's like, and she's like, oh no, I'm looking for a handsome man.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing.
You have to rotate through to the right person in the party, and you get taken off, and then it's like, does he know what we're doing to him? It's like, he wasn't gonna come if I told him that. And it's like, that whole thing's weird. There's the witch later that's like, oh, I'll tell you if you play with me, and then it pans up to a bed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Japanese RP, yeah.
There's the incredibly sexist Coliseum manager too.
Oh, what's he do again?
He's like, oh, it'd be so cool if we kill a girl.
Oh yeah, I want to beat up a girl.
Yeah, no,
audiences love it.
I mean, in his defense, he's okay beating up and killing anybody.
True.
So really, what he's doing is equality. You're the ones that are putting women on a pedestal.
No, he clearly made a point that like the appeal is hurting the woman.
Yeah. When he's talking to the main character, he's very much about, it's like, oh yeah, we get you out there. You could kill a woman and everyone will go wild.
Yeah, but later on, he's just like, I don't care which one we killed. I just want one of them dead.
Yeah, when he's talking to his minions, yeah.
Like that's when you see his real goals.
I like that Mike is like, that's where Mike's moral compass is like, okay, this guy's all right. Like he hates everyone like I do, so it's fine.
Yeah. He was just saying it to you because he thought you were sexist, and that's why, yeah.
Oh man, now this is a podcast in 2024. The NPCs in this game, they just do a better job, I think, of advancing the plot. I didn't have to constantly follow a guide for the most part, I knew where I was supposed to go and more or less what I was supposed to do to keep the story moving. So I played 9 hours of this game and I looked at a guide like once or twice, but I did not beat it. Did any of you guys beat it?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I just got Cat in the party. I just finished the Colosseum and was about to head back to where I assume my town starts forming. But yeah, that's the point where it was 2 a.m. and I had to stop.
Yeah, I had reached the witch yesterday, and then went back today because the first time I played that, anyone that wants to see someone who's get utterly annihilated, check out my Twitch streams on this. I actually thought the witch is a battle you're supposed to lose until I started back someplace else.
You didn't know you just sucked.
Because what happened was I had one round of attacks, and then no one in my party was ever able to attack again. And I'm like, oh, and I just had to sit there and watch as they would one by one occasionally wake up and then be put back to sleep and then just repeatedly beaten until each of them was out one by one. And I'm just like, oh, I guess I can't be like, I had items and stuff to use. I just never could. And I'm like, oh, I guess you're supposed to lose this. And then it just started me back at the last save spot. And I'm like, the heck is that?
You got to have Rand in the party because he's got that wake ability that I'm pretty sure wakes you up from sleep. I never had a chance to test it.
You think that?
That may well have been helpful, but he'd be out anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Rand's wake ability has a small chance to bring someone back from the dead.
I knew it. The very first time I used it, it worked like that. And then every other time after that, it was like, nope.
It's not a great chance, but it's a chance.
But yeah, no, it was definitely like I went back just so I could get past that. And so I actually I have gotten to, I've just gotten Jean.
Which, by the way, like, I don't want to mess with the algorithm or whatever, but isn't a French character who speaks French and is a frog, isn't that insensitive? I could have sworn that was like a mean word for a French person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I feel like it's less about that and more about just how creepy he is. But there's one of these levels where you kind of realize because he's turned into a frog by the witch because he's focused on the witch and the witch finds that creepy while she is trying to seduce anybody and turns them to stone when they won't go with it.
That's funny.
So there's this level where you're just like, you are so much not like on some level they seem like a perfect power couple.
They're both equally horrible.
Yeah, like it's very the Hollywood Strangler meets the Skid Row slasher, where you're just like, you're horrible, and you two being together probably saves everybody else a lot of stress.
Right. That's funny. I like, though, Ryan mentioned like the character abilities. One thing this game does better is that it doesn't bottleneck you into using specific characters in your party because more characters have healing abilities and less characters have abilities that you need to travel the overworld map. I felt like it was a little bit more up to me. I just have the screenshots in the manual if anyone has anything to say about the characters. Let's just run through them real quick because we did it for the other game.
I'll definitely say right off the bat, I'm disappointed in this manual because it doesn't provide clarification as to what those abilities are.
Yeah.
And so you have each character has a special ability, and they're kind of like, oh, you have some special abilities. You should use those. I'm like, the heck are they? Like the previous manual was very clear of what everybody did, and they didn't put it in a way that felt like just game explanation text. It was like, the character can do this like within the world. And I was disappointed that was not here because that was super helpful. Like the manual I felt was a big step down.
I mean, that's not going to apply to most people's experience with it, though. So Ryu, the hero, once again, dragon forms, but it seems like it's easier to get those abilities now. Like a few hours into the game, I got my first dragon form, which is called like Fire Puppy. Like it's like a cute little chubby dragon. Bao is once again the hunter. He has the crossbow, so he can go hunting easily. I gave him, you get an option to bless a character, and it gives them a healing ability. And I blessed Bao, or Bo, whatever his name is, not realizing that it's going to be hours and hours until he's able to be back in my party. Like the primary plot of the game is clearing his name because like not a witch, but some Batwoman frames him for like stealing something. So he's in hiding. It seems like most of the game. So I was like, dang it.
I really hope it's the Batwoman.
Rand is the Piloswine, I think is what it's called. Not Piloswine. What are they called?
Well, it looks like an armadillo.
Right. No, but
I think of him like as an armadillo as well.
I actually looked it up though. It's not an armadillo. It's the thing that people think started COVID. not the bat.
Oh,
but the,
yeah, no.
What are those called? There's a really
Pangolin?
hilarious South Park. Pangolin. Yeah.
I can see pangolin. Yeah.
He's a pangolin.
Those are armadillo-like.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
He's my big soft boy.
He's the buff one, and he can heal you. And your main character can heal himself now with his guts ability. So it's like, thank you for giving me more options to recover health, because these games are hard.
And honestly, he can heal others too, which is also helpful.
So when I saw that every character in the party was getting Cure 1, all I could think to myself was, you got like towards the end of development, and all of your QA testers were saying it's way too hard. We're dying constantly. We can't afford to buy all these herbs. And you're like, just give everyone Cure.
Yeah, leave me alone.
I didn't have that much of an issue with it, but I didn't have like it wasn't a thing I critically needed, but it was so nice to just have that as sort of the peace of mind of like, I'm not intending to use that often, especially like once your main character gets extra abilities. It's like, I want to save that magic for that stuff, but it's good to know that if things are going bad, I have a backup.
True.
Well, there's also a point in the game where you have to be alone, and so the fact that your one character that you have can heal himself is a big help.
Yeah.
Nina, is this the same Nina from the other game? She's a winged woman, but from the same town, but wings are black this time.
I kind of felt like they just kind of redid stuff between her and Bo.
It's the fact that I've heard this game referred to as a direct sequel, and in the second half of the first game, she disappears from your party and gets amnesia and comes back older and more powerful. And so I'm like, I wonder if this is going to be neat. We're going to find out that this game was like what she was up to, because she literally gets knocked out of time and space. So there's a cool like Loki kind of plot line they could play with here.
Did you have anything you wanted additional to add to Kat there, or are we skipping past?
Well, I think we already covered her. She's
Okay.
the cat lady. She can hunt by whacking things with her stick.
Very traditional tsundere character.
Yeah.
Great system there. Her approach is like, yeah, hit things. That'll work, right?
And she can break boulders and stuff.
And she can hunt.
And she can hunt by hitting the animal with her stick. So if you don't have bow, which I guess you don't for most of this game, you can sneak up on the animal and hit him.
And you should absolutely be hunting. Like when I did a couple of hunts just because they popped up, and when I got into town, I'm like, oh crud, I'm out of money, but I need these upgrades. What can I sell? I went and I went down to the roast I'd gotten for hunting a boar, and it was worth 200 gold.
Oh, nice. Seriously?
Wow.
Yeah, roasts are stupidly expensive.
I'm going to sell so many roasts.
I cannot do the fishing mini game. The main character also has the ability to fish if you give him bait and a stick as his sort of what's it called? Sort of
etc.
items. Yeah, your tertiary items. But I'm really bad at it. I cannot hook anything. I'm guessing I can buy a better fishing rod that makes that easier, but I think I've caught one fish the whole time. I usually ignore the fishing events.
Yeah.
And then John, I'm guessing. He's my favorite character because first of all, he's a funny Looney Tunes kind of Michigan J Frog crossed with Bugs Bunny sort of personality. And I know I guess he's kind of a creep. I guess I missed that part of the story, but he gives you fast travel. And 8 hours in the game, I got fast travel, and he can hop over anything in the overworld map as long as it's just 1 pixel or whatever. And he moves way faster. So 8 hours in, I'm already minimizing my random encounters. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then Spar is this sort of Gardevoir-looking plant woman who is being kept prisoner by a circus.
Plant man.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I thought it was a woman.
And he's a dude.
Oh, okay. That's where my previous screenshot here. Maybe this is a different version of the game, but it's clearly like a wizard girl.
I mean, I think you're making assumptions here.
Well, yeah, but this isn't full disclosure. This is not my screenshot. It's a Game Boy Advance screenshot. But anyway, it's kind of cruel because you know that this character is being kept by the circus, and the circus follows you around the game map. It'll appear at almost every town you go to, but you can't save them yet, or him yet, whatever. You can just pay money to see it. And then I guess eventually you will actually watch the circus performance. And this game is really okay, I'm going to say it. We might cut this, Mike. But again, though, I didn't do this, okay? I am reporting on the game I am covering. The guy says the salad tossing show is about to begin.
Oh, Jesus.
Well,
that's fantastic. Oh, my God.
Oh, wow. And it's supposed to be a pun on it's a plant thing, but it's just like, I don't know if it meant that back then, but holy cow. Yeah, we cut that.
And then
Mike.
the last one is Sten.
Okay, he's like the monkey character. He's long arms, can reach across gaps. And I think that was it, right? Did he have any other special abilities?
He is interesting in that he seems to have a stronger balance of just between attack and magic,
Okay.
but he's also, I think of him as like he's the first creepy player that can join your party because the introduction to him, and it basically is a cutscene, is you show up in a town that he's in and he's like, hey, I need a volunteer for a magic trick. Your character volunteers, like, I'm going to make him disappear. And he disappears. And I think you may have be required to have like Nina and Kat in your party. And so they're left, you're gone. And then he's like, well, that was the trick. And it's like, bring him back. And it's like, and he basically starts leveraging this into, well, maybe I can bring him back if you'll go on a date with me. And he ups it to like, or a date with both of you. And you're just like,
Yeah.
like
He kidnaps
they're
people.
both mad.
Right.
And then you basically still let him in the party. And it's just, and it's odd that like, I feel like this is going to come up later that once you start to build up your town and like when you go back there, everyone in your party gets a room. So you can tell people are missing because it's like, oh, there's empty rooms. I'm going to get more people. But, and you go in and just kind of check in with what's going on with them and they'll have like dialogue.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so far his is always just, hey, which one are you after, Kat or Nina?
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know how the game is intending, like, I don't know if that matters or if the game is just trying to push you to actually have to think about that. But like, he's very much angling this. And I don't know if that's just his like, which one are you taking? I get the other or what?
Yeah. I mean, but let's be
Ugh.
real though. Like that was a big part of like 90s like broy discourse. Like people would be like, "Oh, are you a Ginger or a Marianne or whatever?" You know what I mean? Ginger, is that her name? The millionaire on Gilligan's Island?
I mean, the millionaire is not either of those.
Ginger and Marianne.
Oh, that's right. Ginger was
Yeah,
the
that was
actress and
Mrs. Howell.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get her in the mix.
No. It's the millionaire and his wife. So the millionaire is Thurston.
And then his wife was Mrs. Howell, and then Ginger and Marianne. I know they had characters, but I can't remember what they are.
Yeah, Ginger and Marianne. No, I think that slip up just maybe a Freudian slip.
Right.
That
Mike knows his Gilligan's Island lore.
Jeremy's got the thirst for Thurston.
He is old. If you marry him, there's a good chance that money's coming your way sometime soon. So I can
There you go.
understand.
Plus, he's also the voice of Mr. Magoo, so he's got that going for him.
Oh, that's
Love
fun.
Mr. Magoo. That's fun. So can we any other things to say about what we liked about the game? I think we kind of covered a lot of the cool additions to it and the new characters. Any other Joy pros before we get a little critical?
One of the quality of life improvements
Mhm.
was, and actually Shining Force did a similar type thing, because so much of this is upgrading weapons. There's a trade-in weapons option that if you don't actually buy it, it will still show you at least in one stat what is the improvement or decline in at least one of the stats going to be. So you can actually see, oh, this is going to improve. And when you're in that buying screen, it will show you who in the party can use that item. So you're not buying stuff and be like, oh, I'll buy 3 of these. It'll be great. And then you can't.
Yeah.
So that certainly helped.
And there's like an auto sort thing. You can clean up your item box and it'll kind of put them all in stacks. But like, you know,
the items don't stack natively, which is just like...
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because there's not really a way to separate them once they've been stacked. So if you want to say sell one of your antidotes, you know, but keep some of them.
Yeah, you can do that. You just switch the number. It's the same way like how you could buy 9 at a time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because you could select the number.
Yeah. Just a more pleasant game overall. Can we complain about it?
Oh, and I was going to say the music I think was really good. Like when the music started every time I played this, and I'm just at the start screen, it's like this is catchy. I appreciate this music.
I like the music in the first game too, though. I think both of these games had pretty good soundtracks.
This was the one that I think stood out more, like to the point where I'm like, I should note that.
It's better.
I will say something that I got a kick out of just because it was stupid and exactly the kind of humor I find entertaining. When you go to the arena for the first time, they're like, oh, yes, you need to go talk to the director of HR. You know, it's like, I'm being sent to a death match and there's a human resources department. You know what? Fine. I'll go talk to him. You walk in and it's that classic Japanese oiled up bodybuilder in a thong. And I'm like, I need to talk to HR about the director of HR.
Yeah.
I feel has a weird uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in tone with so much of this game.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is they're both like that in Japanese and this one's just more honest, or something was with whoever was translating stuff.
It's a lot. Well, speaking of fusion, I don't like the change to the fusion system because in the previous game, you would become whole new characters and your individual parts would level up. So like if you fuse with the fish guy and the Minotaur, you're a new character with new abilities, and the fish and the Minotaur are still leveling up. I can still equip them separately to bring up the fused character stats as a whole. And that character is ultra powerful because you have the stats and the life points of 3 different characters. This one, they make it so that any character can fuse. Mike, did you build the fusion room yet at your home base?
Yes, I've got the fusion room, but haven't really done much with it.
So you can find these hidden characters called shamans, and they're more or less like your Pokemon. Like there's different colors for them, and each one does a different ability. And so you can take any of your party member and fuse them with up to 2 shamans, and you'll gain special spells. Your stats will change, and you can kind of mix and match and like see what kind of combinations you can get. Not all combinations are valid, but what's irritating about that is that to me, you're turning these NPCs into basically just equipment. They don't really feel like characters anymore. It's just like, which shaman am I going to equip? And then to me, that mechanic is less interesting. But perhaps in the most wacky, turn of events, this part of the game is very badly translated. Mike, did you actually try? You haven't tried fusing people?
No. So I've just picked up the second of the shamans, but I haven't gotten back yet.
2 pro tips. 1, make sure you keep Sten leveled up because apparently there's a part of the game where he's the only character you can use. So if you're not leveling him up, it's very, very difficult. But 2, when you're fusing, yes means no and cancel means stop.
That feels very
What?
Twitter.
The character says, "Do you need an explanation on how to fuse?" And if you say yes, she'll go, "Oh, all right," and not explain. They got the button swapped or the translation swapped. So you have to say no to get the explanation. And then if you're fusing, but you only want to use 1 shaman, the only button available is pick another shaman or cancel. And you'd think cancel would like unselect the one I've selected because that's what the word cancel means. No, cancel means stop and just use 1.
Huh.
So it's just a real clunky thing that I kind of applaud them though, because like the Game Boy Advance version fixes all of these issues, but they gave us the one that was on Super Nintendo. So like, we've done quite a few of these episodes at this point, Mike. I kind of think we're sort of amateur video game historians at this point. And historically, I'm glad we got the buggy version. That's sort of interesting, but that's kind of annoying. And this game still has problems with the number of random encounters. I still felt it's excessive. It's not as bad because sometimes the enemies will run away. So like if the enemy knows it can't win, it'll run. But I don't know, Ryan, you played Earthbound, right?
I never got around to Earthbound, no.
It's phenomenal. And my favorite
That's
mechanic,
what I've heard, yeah.
my favorite mechanic is that the little enemies you would normally defeat to grind your way up the ladder, they'll just auto be killed. You'll encounter them and the screen will flash and you'll just get the experience points. And it's like, thank you, because I hate grinding as a mechanic, and that's what keeps me away from a lot of RPGs. It just feels like it's wasting my time, especially with an auto battle feature where like I don't know, you don't have to do anything. I don't know. It still bugged me.
And what's crazy is even though you have all of these encounters, and what bothers me about the frequency of encounters is that you'll have an encounter, you'll win, and you'll see a hunting opportunity or a fishing opportunity pop up, and then get another random encounter before you can get to it. It's like, come on, game, stop stopping me from accessing your ancillary features.
I do wish the hunting appearances were a bit more well developed, since you have, the long grass would appear and that's where you could hunt. And on one hand, you'd have situations where it's like, okay, I would like to get there. And if any encounter happened, when you came back to the map, it was gone. The other frustrating thing is that those could basically appear anywhere. And so I'd have situations where I didn't feel like dealing with it, where like it would pop up on like the ramp that I have to go up or something. So like I have to go into this thing only because I have to go into that and I can leave it and it will disappear from the map.
What we didn't mention is that the hunting and fishing mechanics, they only appear after you've defeated an enemy. And it's kind of like storytelling wise, it's kind of neat because like, okay, I cleared this area is safe now and now I can hunt, right? It's like a little reward, but like you said,
did it?
Yeah.
I actually went to access a hunt once and there was nothing there. Like I checked behind every tree.
Yes, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Could not find anything.
So I don't fully understand it, but I don't know, it's kind of neat. All right, anything else to say, guys, about these games before we get to our rankings?
A couple of things that sort of all tie into how the battles work. I guess somewhat mixed feelings on this is that this time, the first time you're dealing with a new enemy, their health bar is just a question mark.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And after you've dealt with one, the health bar is there. So I'm kind of not sure how I feel about that. It makes the boss battles trickier. And so I just got in the habit of kind of having a rough idea of how much health I think they should have, and then kind of keeping a running count of damage I had done.
Mhm.
To be like, okay, I think this should be about 400 or 500 at this point in the game, and working from there. For more of the wild encounters, especially, I actually found those more fun here because this game added a lot more to those encounters. So you have a lot more of the counter attacks, and they work both ways of someone attacks and whoever they attacked responds back with a counter attack. And you also had like the lead off attacks where you would get to attack first. And I think throwing those in meant that there's something like really satisfying, especially for some of the more annoying enemies, like the stupid flies that attack really fast to show them like, oh, it's a lead off attack. I'm like, oh, there's 5 of them. I will actually wipe them all out before they ever get a chance to attack. This is really satisfying.
Yeah, and it makes grinding better.
Yeah, because grind you will have to grind. Same as the first one. Every new location I walked into, I died at least once. Just like, oh yeah, which was really annoying when I got pretty close to where I stopped playing in the Coliseum and realized that the death was costing me money.
Oh,
Yeah, you lose a chunk of cash every time you die. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to stop dying, which means I have to go outside and grind.
I mean, there are the banks that let you store it.
True, yeah.
There was something later on that gave me an option for something, and I'm annoyed that didn't tell me up front that was going to cost.
Mm,
Because it's like, oh, all right. By the way, I took your money, and it's like,
yeah.
I wouldn't have done that otherwise.
you guys could be a cheater like me and just rewind. You could just undo your mistakes.
I do think this also went way too long to the first save. Like, there's a long stretch, and it's like, I want to just have the game saved and not being like, am I going to have to do all this over again? And that was a long stretch.
Yeah, it's a very long prologue.
Did you guys talk to any of the priests though? Because that's kind of neat. You can save the game. You can like talk to them about your party members. They can like give you like advice on what to do next. And I was like, this feels like a clever in-game, assistance mechanic. Like in a way, a lot of
I did that when I was stuck, but it didn't really help.
Yeah, it felt kind of generic.
it's not great. I just think it's kind of neat because a lot of people IRL use priests as tutorials and like tell me what to do in life. And so to have that character kind of loosely telling you what to do in game, I was like, that was clever. That was a good idea, somebody.
It does make the vague and not actually helpful advice also seem a bit more fitting.
Yeah. Except the god is evil. And I think that's the full thrust of the game.
I don't know if God's evil. I kind of feel like God's going to be on your side. God's the dragon that you're going to become.
Oh, no. I think God's the eyeball. I think Saint Eva is the eyeball that wipes your father and sister from existence.
I will say the thing that I think is an interesting thing to think about with this is at a certain point, you get to where your save points are actually the dragon statues from the first game. And so now you have this interesting thing that is the old religion, and the new ones are all saint things. So this actually has a very interesting feel of Christianity is displacing the original religion thing going on.
Interesting.
That I don't know how that plays out, but it was like, oh, there's an interesting element to this.
Yeah.
Well, and the world the world itself is very confusing too. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys did the little riddle guy in the circus.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
one of the options was Teflon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why does this universe know what Teflon is? Why does this universe have full running water in every home? Like every home has a tap that does not stop running and a bathroom. They have plumbing. Why do these tiny little towns in a pseudo Renaissance medieval setting have running water?
Yeah, and I will say I am looking forward to seeing how my own town builds up, because I think that's an interesting element of this. Like, I was making mental notes because every so often you run into someone who's like, oh yeah, I don't have a house, but I do something useful. And it's just like, I want to be able to get all these people because I can see where this is going.
The first one's living in the bathroom.
It's sort of like it's a socialist game. This will get us the thing. Let's get some controversy going.
There you go.
This game's like, hey, instead of having people be homeless, maybe give them dignity in a home and put them to work for
Yep.
each other.
It's not your town, it's our town, comrade.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be all. It gives me a Terraria vibe of just like I can just collect people and kind of store them all in this one town we've got. This is great.
That's where people are afraid that socialism would go.
Yep.
Anything else to say, guys?
I did have one funny moment that was very funny to me. So in one of the dungeons, if you explore enough, you find an item called a fire rock. And
Yes.
it's just I'm like, okay, fire rock. Clearly this is like a one-use magic grenade. This is gonna cast fire one, and it's gonna hit and it's gonna deal damage. Great, I'll save it for the next boss fight. Well, the next boss fight I got to was the lumberjack that you have to beat in order to steal his axe to get into the Colosseum. And so I'm like, okay, I've got this thing. Toss, dragon, insta dead.
Yeah.
It just one shots him. And I'm like, oh, I guess it casts like fire 3 or something. I'm not gonna argue, but
Yeah, I had the same moment. I think I just had Bow left. I think Ryu had collapsed and I was out of healing abilities. And I was like, well, let's see if this works. that was how I learned what those what do they call them in Breath of the Wild? The arrows that instantly kill whatever it hits because it takes them to another dimension.
Oh, the ancient arrows, yeah.
The ancient arrows. I didn't know what that did until I was on death's door fighting a Lionel. And I was like, let's give this a try. Oh my god, it's gone. Yeah, that's a cool item. Well, guys, I think that brings us to the moment of truth. We've covered the Joy Pros, the Joy Cons, and every bit in between. So it's time to declare each game from today's episode as either a NintenDO or a NintenDON'T, starting with Breath of the Wild. Whoops. One day, when Mike and I are old men, we will cover that game on a retro gaming podcast. Now, Breath of Fire for the Super Nintendo. Ryan, you're our wonderful guest. Why don't you start us off? The first Breath of Fire, NintenDO or NintenDON'T?
I will say NintenDON'T with like it's NintenDO with an if and NintenDON'T with a but.
Okay. What's the if and the but?
So basically the timeline. If Breath of Fire existed and Breath of Fire 2 did not, I would say play Breath of Fire because it's formative era of RPGs. It's a good example of all of the good things and bad things of the RPGs that were created, back in the 90s. And for that reason alone, I would say play it. But Breath of Fire 2 does exist, which is just better in every way. And so because Breath of Fire 2 is a thing, I'd say you could probably skip Breath of Fire 1.
Breath of Fire 1, it traumatized me because there's so much good that's hidden behind so many hours and hours of grinding. It's upsetting at all the cool things this game does than to just have me do so much random encounters and then to end the game with an auto battle. Future re-releases of this game address this issue. They dialed down the number of random encounters and just gave you more experience points. So essentially, the game progression stays the same. It just wastes your time less. That's the only version I could possibly recommend, but we're reviewing the version that's posted in Nintendo Switch Online. Mm-hmm. And despite all the time I spent with it, 40 hours to beat it, don't do it. NintenDON'T. I'm sorry. Like Brian said, there's better games at the same pricing subscription. Mike, I think Mike's going to hit this with a Super NintenDON'T.
I feel like I can't go Super NintenDON'T considered it is painful for the first few hours. And I can imagine that at some point this becomes enjoyable, but I didn't ever reach that point. And it honestly, I think this may be closer to like I'm averaging this out between like a Super NintenDON'T game and a Super NintenDO manual. And surprisingly, that just enriched the experience a fair amount for me.
So the manual keeps us from being a Super NintenDON'T.
I think that may actually be what this is. That I think if I was having to just deal with this without that, it would have been a lot more frustrating. That gave me at least enough. But I think it's ridiculous. This is a game where you have parties to fight with theoretically, but takes forever to reach them.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
If I wanted to suffer without a party, I would just deal with my regular life.
No, they're not done. Ryan, Breath of Fire 2. We all feel definitely better about it. So does it cross into a Nintendo in your mind?
Yeah, I would say like I was saying. I mean, I only got to the Coliseum, but honestly, I may go back and keep playing. The story is intriguing enough to me that I want to know where it goes. I want to know what the deal with Saint Eva is. I want to know if it is in fact the Eldritch Eye that keeps staring at me and rewriting time and space. I want to know where the characters go. You know, I want to get to know these characters. They're interesting to me. I would not say it's a Super Nintendo simply because it is flawed. It does have some issues. It's the kind of thing where it's like I would hand, if I had physical media for this, I would hand someone the cartridge and then I would hand them a list of things to make sure they do and don't do while playing. It's like top of the list. You're gonna grind, accept it now.
Yeah. There's a right and a wrong way to play this game. And if you're playing it the wrong way, you'll probably have a bad time. So I played through the entire first Breath of Fire game because what little OCD I got from my mom, it made me anxious about the idea of like missing something cool at the end of Breath of Fire or missing cool things in this game because I didn't understand it, not having played the first Breath of Fire. And again, this is listed as a direct sequel. So if anyone's interested, let me just tell you, you can start with this one. It's completely enjoyable. 10 hours in, I have not encountered anything that I was like, well, I'm glad I played the first game. It's just so much more pleasant from a quality of life standpoint. And I actually think like, I'm not a very big retro RPG guy, but I like this aesthetic more than say like Final Fantasy VI. I like the color and the cartooniness of it. So if you have the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, I would still say go with Shining Force. I think Shining Force, the battles are so much more fun. That game has the edge. But this is a Nintendo. If you're a fan of old RPGs, you can do a lot worse than this. And I think there'll be enough cool stuff in there that you'll be happy you spent time with it. Mike, do you agree or disagree?
I mean, I think this has the lesser bow, and I think it's got a lesser manual, but it's a much better game. I think I'd definitely go Nintendo, and also intend to probably go back when I've got time to go further in this.
Yeah, I think we're all gonna go back until this is Nintendo done. Like that's a pretty good sign
Yeah,
that all three of us are like, I could see spending more time with this game.
that's why I'm close to saying a Super Nintendo on this. I like the town building thing and the fact that there's a bunch of people to go find and like get into that town at some point.
Yeah. I guess we should just specify though that it's not town building like Animal Crossing style of like placing items. Like it kind of happens organically as you just invite more and more people into your town. But it's neat.
This is the kind of game that makes me wish that we were getting more of the Final Fantasy VII remake style games.
Yeah.
Go back to the 80s, go back to the 90s, find these gems, buff them up, fix the flaws, and give it a new coat of paint, like this, Fallout, the original two Baldur's Gates. Those would be great with updated systems.
That'd be sick. A Breath of Fire remake with like really good 3D graphics and like these same characters. And man, right, you're a smart guy, Ryan Warboss 5. So I think we're gonna call that game over for today. The final scores are Breath of Fire is a NintenDON'T. Breath of Fire 2 is a Nintendo. Ryan, dude, you rock. You just crush it every time we do this together. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Before you go, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
So yes, as you said, I am Warboss 5, WARBOSS and the number 5, basically everywhere. Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch, yada 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 yada. I don't really do much these days. I used to be big into streaming, so there's a ton of VODs on my YouTube that you can go back and watch. Full playthrough of Persona 4, full playthrough of Breath of the Wild, full playthrough of both Psychonauts games. And it's the kind of thing where it's like it's there, it's not going anywhere. I may do more at some point. I don't know, just not in the cards right now.
Gotcha. But there's still a lot of good stuff up there if you want to check
Oh
it
yeah,
out.
absolutely.
Yeah. So everyone join us next time when Mike and I will be jabbing deeper into the Nintendo Switch online catalog in our epic quest to research and review them all. Next on the docket, it's an all-out slugfest as we pit Punch-Out against Super Punch-Out in a fight to the finish. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcheroo.com. That's switcharoo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, our Discord, our YouTube, our TikTok, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Please like, comment, subscribe, and review. As always, thanks for listening to The Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Ryan, Mike, and JMO.
I've been Ryan.
I've been Mike.
And I've been JMO. Game on, everyone. I have a little mini game for us to play.
Ooh, fun.
And I didn't make a slide for it, but just picture a cool title slide.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
I just need to come up with a name for the game. It's going to be called ROSTM.
Rats of Sarcastic Transition? I don't think they exist.
It's a reference to something I can tell.
It's Princess Bride.
Ah, the ROT. Oh, I get it. I get the reference. I understood that reference.